was trying to do.
Part which I consider is when you talk about quality assurance is that
If I took it out of my ear, it would just quit talking altogether, but said it was all to hear. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
good, how are you?
Doing well. I don't know how to get that to stop. I turned it all the way down. There we go. Or down that way. I can make that silent. All right. I'm John Kirtley. I'm the director of the Board of Pharmacy. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who you're speaking with this afternoon. Just a couple of things about our procedure. On this side of the table, we are Board of Pharmacy staff members that work here in the office every day. Myself, Dr. Brenda McCready, will be with us in just a moment, who's our assistant director. And then we have Miss Ashley Bales, who is our legal counsel here at the Board of Pharmacy offices. We also have Dr. Lindsay Tankersley, who's one of our inspector investigators, who's actually the one who worked on this complaint we received. On the other side, we have four of our pharmacy board members, Dr. Clint Boone, Dr. Brian Jolly, Dr. Rodney Richmond, who is the president of the board currently, and Dr. Lenore Newsom, who is our chair of this informal committee. If you want to tell everybody who you are as well.
Okay, my name is Ajana Cunningham, pharmacist at Walmart Pharmacy in Forest City, Arkansas.
Okay. So Dr. Cunningham, in this process, since this was part of a complaint that was brought to the board that we investigate as part of a potential med error or failure to counsel, what we usually do is we'll turn it over to staff, and Dr. Tankersley will probably give us a review of what the complaint was and what we found in it, and then we'll turn over to the Board of Pharmacy members, and they will want to have a discussion with you about what is in this kind of order and notice of hearing that you've received as well. They've just seen this information fresh as soon as they sat down at the table as well. At some point in their discussion, they're going to suggest what they would like to do with this information, whether they want to take a specific action or offer some sort of action today, or if they want to send this to a full board for a later hearing, or what they want to do. And we don't know what it is until they come up with it. Whatever they come up with, you have the opportunity to either agree or disagree with. It's not something you have to make that decision sitting right there today. Because we realize that we'll put it in writing and send it to you if they ask us to offer you something. And that would also give you a chance to ask any follow-up questions that you have. At the same time, I always ask, do you know why you're here today?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions about how this works?
No questions.
Okay, well, Dr. Cunningham, realizing you haven't sat in that chair before, if at some point during this, if you do have a question or want some clarification, by all means, stop us, ask us any questions that you have. We want to be as helpful as we can in helping answer any of those questions.
Thank you.
We'll turn it over to.
I just have one thing I want to add. So you at one point had an attorney, but you're appearing today without the attorney by your choice. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that's clear. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Tankersley to summarize her investigation and findings.
Okay, pursuant to a complaint received in February alleging that counsel was not provided upon the picking up of new prescriptions, an investigation was initiated. Complainant was the patient's daughter, who is involved in taking care of her father's medication. Let's see. This occurred at the Walmart in Forest City.
Yes.
And on February 13th, the prescriptions for patient A were verbally called into the pharmacy to be filled. The prescriptions called in were a Z-Pack, a Medrol dose pack, and Tramadol. The three prescriptions that were called in are original prescription medication orders, and per the patient profile don't appear that the patient had taken those within the year. So it would all be new prescriptions. Dr. Cunningham was the pharmacist on duty who reviewed the prescriptions described for accuracy, completed the final product verification, and was on duty at the time the prescriptions were filled, dispensed, and sold. Based on statements received as well as in investigative findings, it appears that patient was not counseled. We received a statement from the technician that was responsible for selling the prescriptions at point of sale, who acknowledged, I believe, to Dr. Cunningham that the prescriptions, that he did not want to be counseled on them, and that he was sick and he was ready to go, and that then he left. And then the other technician that was adjacent basically repeated the same story. So we show a lack of counsel there.
Do you want to tell us what happened in your words?
So I have a statement, I prepared a statement. Is it okay if I go
Yeah.
with my statement? I was made aware that there was a complaint filed with the Board of Pharmacy regarding a patient at our pharmacy. The complaint was filed by the patient's daughter, and she stated that her father did not get counseled on his new medications. On February 13th, our pharmacy was managing a high volume of tasks and patient interactions. At the time, I was relatively new to the pharmacy, and I did not know the patient as well as the other staff members. And I cannot clearly recall the specifics of this interaction. However, the technicians have provided their statements of what they recall that happened that day. While I strive to perform at my very best every day, the pressures of managing multiple responsibilities may have impacted my ability to remember every interaction. I deeply regret any misunderstanding or oversight that may have occurred as a result. I documented that the patient refused counseling. The patient was undergoing dental work during this time and had picked up some medications a week prior, which had documented counseling. The patient may have thought that these were the same medications that he received that prior week that he was counseled on. I am also not aware if the patient informed his daughter that he refused counsel on these medications. Our standard process involves the technician bringing the patients to the consultation window and notifying the pharmacist when counseling is needed. This process is typically followed. However, there are some exceptions to this process. The main reasons I've come across that counseling is refused is that either the patient's had it before or been on it for years. They're a nurse or a doctor, or they're someone else picking up the medication for the patient, and it's not the actual patient. But even in these situations where patients refuse counseling, I always make it a point to inform them that it is for their safety and to ensure no changes or concerns are overlooked. I also reassure them that they can call the pharmacy to speak to the pharmacist at any time if they have any questions or concerns about their medications. Most patients let me continue to counsel them and thank me for ensuring their safety. I take my role as a pharmacist very seriously and deeply value the trust that patients placed in me. And I am committed to ensuring that every patient receives the attention and care that they need. While I regret any misunderstanding or oversight that may have occurred, I respectfully ask for understanding as I work to reinforce communication and processes within the pharmacy to prevent similar situations in the future. My integrity and dedication to patient care remain at the forefront of my practice.
Thank you. So was the complaint just that they didn't get counsel, or was there error?
The complaint was just that they had not received counseling. The
Okay.
daughter had cited that it had occurred before. And then also kind of we had been talking about Walmart's system and the ability to push refuse or anything like that. And ones that the system will either flag as required or not required. From my review of the record, these 3 medications had not been filled for this patient within the last year. And only one being the tramadol flagged as even requiring counseling. So the steroid and the Medrol dose pack were not required. You can see that in pages like 13 through 15 of your packet.
Give us just a moment while we
Yes,
finish looking
ma'am.
at the material. So how familiar, are you familiar with the daughter? Does she pick up the parent's medication?
So the daughter, well, I guess I can't really speak on to like actually meeting the daughter before, like, I was new at the time and I've never seen the daughter before. So, she did work for Walmart in Little Rock, I believe. So, and I think she tried to, work at our store at one point.
So there was no personal relationship with you and the daughter or anything?
So,
Okay.
Beyond what's in the packet, was it just a general complaint by the daughter that, because it sort of seemed to read that the various family members had not been contacted? It's just a general complaint, if there wasn't a counseling, or was there some error that came, or some injury that came about because of failure to counsel?
So the complaint as received, as you see in the packet, that says the pharmacist at this location did not offer consultation to their customers, yada, yada, you've read that, prompted me to reply to the complainant. Do you have an example so that I can dig into? After which she provided me with these 3 prescriptions and this instance where her father picked up his prescriptions.
Patient counseling regulation and Arkansas law.
yes, like I said, I'm a new graduate and I know that you shall counsel on new prescriptions. So I know I don't recall the exact interaction with the patient, but I know that you shall counsel. And like I said, it's only a few times where people, like patients, refuse counseling. Some patients,
I mean, you're aware that there is no such thing as counseling office.
yes. And so I, like, sometimes if they refuse, it's, even though I still try to inform them, like sometimes I'll try to give them like information on the medication still, even if they refuse, or they just, even if it's a new prescription and they try to refuse, I still try to give them the information. So I still kind of try to force the counsel, even though they denied. But sometimes patients really don't want to listen sometimes to me, but I do attempt to try to counsel the patient.
Well, I would encourage to empower you. Remember, you're the pharmacist in the situation.
Yes.
I know it's difficult. I realize that patients can sometimes be hard to deal with,
Mhm.
but you have the medication in your control.
Yes.
So even if it's just a paucity of counseling, you can't make them stand there and wait on the call for half hour without them pausing the team break. But to some degree, even if it's taken it before, give them some modicum of information. In fact, the regulations tell you what constitutes effective counseling. But there's just kind of zero tolerance that there is no such thing as refusal of counseling.
Yes, sir.
In this instance, did you attempt to force that counsel?
So, like I said, it was very busy that day, so I can't, like, I was new at the time, so I can't really recall. But like I said, normally when I do try to force the counseling on both patients.
So I'll refer you to the statement submitted by you. I do not recall that exact patient name. However, I did check the cameras at the exact moment that he walked up to check out, noticed he picked up the prescription himself about his daughter. When I asked the technician about this patient, they stated that the patient was not brought down to the counseling window due to the patient requesting not to be counseled. The patient was handed his prescription and he actually walked in the opposite direction of counseling window.
So
So no
that,
interaction.
that video was actually a recording of the wrong patient. It was an actual another patient that was coming to pick up their refills on their medication. So it wasn't the video with that statement. It was that video of the wrong patient.
And did I hear you say that unless the patient, unless the patient comes to the doctor?
That still, like, does not excuse them for not getting counsel, but, I'm not saying that I don't provide counseling for them if they do say that. I was just saying that most of the time when people try to refuse counseling, or if it's been, most of the time, it'll be an annual review that we do, that most patients refuse counseling, like the new prescriptions. I always try to will always counsel patients and make sure that they know about their medications.
regardless of whether they're
Yes,
really expert.
yes,
So you understand that you have an independent license to practice pharmacy, same as they have an independent license to practice medicine and nursing.
yes, sir.
If you have a duty of care to them, irrespective if there's overlap,
Yes, sir.
they deserve to be counseled, same as you deserve to be properly diagnosed
Yes, sir.
or properly administered medication from other person. Diagnosis or etc.
Yes, sir.
I have a quick question. Back to Dr. Tankersley's going over your statement. If realized that that was the wrong patient that you sent or you reviewed the video on,
Mhm.
did you attempt to correct this statement and contact Dr. Tankersley or
Yeah.
pull the video and send it to us or anything to say, hey, I made a mistake, this was not the right patient?
Yes, ma'am. I, emailed.
And in all transparency, this was February when I started. I received the video, I reviewed it. The date stamps are clear to the second, matching up with the POS records or point of sale records for this prescription. I, in error, did not save it to my, I downloaded it, but did not save it, didn't realize I needed to. Walmart is happy to provide that video. I don't think it's really a sticking point. We didn't cancel. But the video matched up with the point of sale of these three prescriptions to the second. And the demographics of the gentleman are also correct.
Well, it's pretty clear that you put forth an effort, try most of the time. It sounds like it's something perhaps less than all the time. You do recognize, that you understand patient confidentiality. I would encourage you, you being the pharmacist, that you know what your duty of care is to a patient, that you exercise that care. Simply need to think about communication skills, and maybe that would be an area of continuing education that you could work on that would help you to how to handle difficult patients. But recognize that it's incumbent upon you to perform the duty of care that's required of you under Arkansas law. So I would recommend in this case, be non-disciplinary. We require 10 hours of continuing education in the area of patient counseling and even broader in pharmacy communication. Write up for us a plan of care, telling us what it is that you intend to do to change your personal practice to ensure that you counsel in all cases where it's required. And that you submit that letter of plan of action.
Yes, sir.
Add two, are you okay with that?
Or is there gonna be an issue finding 10 hours to see on that? Should we broaden it to pharmacy law? Make it, just make sure.
Maybe 2 hours. Sounds like- Whatever.
I don't know how many
I don't
CE
know.
hours I could find just on, I think on counseling, I would tie that into med error reduction on counseling. But on communication, I don't know how much of that I can really find.
Well, it sounds like it's the root of the problem.
Yeah, I agree.
To water that out.
Yeah.
I
I think if you give a 6-month time period, it's easier to find it than if it was like 2 months, but you would allow up to a couple of hours of law in it.
a couple hours of law, but the preponderance of it being
Yeah.
patient counseling. Patient communication.
Okay.
Maybe if you have to broaden that to just communication. I would do that. That would be measured in terms of continuing education. but Would be in addition to your regular 30 hours of teaching, so you would get 30 hours of continuing education. Typically required, and then these 10 hours would be on top of that. So you at a minimum would have 40 hours in this time. 30 to 2025.
That's a motion. Okay. A second?
Second.
Have a motion by Dr. Rickson and a second by Dr. Boone. Any further discussion?
Had no monetary side of that at all.
I have. Did we want to delve into the fact that the system did not require counseling when it says new RX not required on the Medrol and the steroid? I mean, the Medrol and the Z-Pack.
Is it on their profile previously, past a year?
It's not. And when you look at the council report for those drugs, it says RX type, new RX, reason type, not required for counseling. That kind of, I mean, on those two, you wouldn't have even been flagged to counsel. You guys may need to be in front of the mic.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, you have to, there we go.
Yeah, so when we got this complaint, we had similar questions about that report. And what we found after working with our technology teams and doing a lot of testing was that it was actually a flaw in our counseling report. Because these prescriptions were called in together, they were kind of handled as a batch of prescriptions, if that makes sense. The three were all in one tote. You know, when the patient came to pick up, it was one checkout order. And what we discovered is because the system knows that one of those items within the tote was a new therapy, new RX, I guess you could consider that like the highest priority counseling. For whatever reason at that time, the council report was only hanging on to the documentation for that one RX, even though all three were heading over to the window together as a batch. So we were able to have our technology teams look into that, and they've corrected that issue with the report. But we are confident all three RXs in that batch would have made their way over to council.
Well, and that's a good thing, that it's been corrected, but one thing I would point out is the regulations say that the pharmacist shall counsel. It doesn't say that the computer system shall alert the pharmacist to counsel. If the computer system was down, the pharmacist would still need to counsel. If the computer system didn't trigger an algorithm for a drug utilization review, whatever that issue may be, drug interaction or excessive dose or whatever, that drug utilization review is incumbent on the pharmacist, not on the computer system. Computer system is a tool, nothing more, nothing less than a book, a calculator, a wall chart, a slide rule, or anything else you might use. So while you don't want to put your pharmacist at a disadvantage by having, of course, this sounds like this really was more of a reporting issue, but you don't want to put your pharmacist at a disadvantage, but it's important that they recognize the practice pharmacy is on them.
Anything else? Any other discussion? Okay, if not, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The motion passes for the unanimous vote.
We will put this in writing also and send it to you in case there's any other further questions. I'm taking from earlier stuff they've done today that they'll have a due date for all this, like June 30th of 2025. So it's not something that would be the end of this year or even in the next month or so. So if you got any questions when you get that, by all means, give us a holler back.
Thank you all. for your
Absolutely.
time.
Thank you all. And safe travels. Yes, all right, y'all, take care.
All right, next up, we have, let's see, Dr. Crystal Tate, and I think I just clicked the button asking her to turn her video back on. I turned it off a minute ago because it was pulling up on our screen. It was her time.
Okay. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes.
All right. So just as a quick overview, what I usually do is tell people kind of who you're talking to at the table and everything with that. If you can see us on screen, everyone from here, this direction is we're staff members here at the Board of Pharmacy. Myself, Dr. Brenda McCrady, will be back in just a moment, and Miss Ashley Bales, who is our legal counsel. And then on the other side, we have 4 of our pharmacy board members, Dr. Clint Boone, Dr. Brian Jolly, Dr. Rodney Richmond, who's the president of the board currently, and Dr. Lenore Newsom, who is our informal committee chairperson. Dr. Tate is with us actually today. She has had a couple of tries at our jurisprudence exam, and you guys have that on the table that you can look at. And her request would be to be able to take a 3rd round exam. So I would probably say, if it's okay with you guys, if she could give us kind of, and she's practiced this with me, because we do this for the law exam, who you are, where you're from, where you went to school, and why you're getting a license in Arkansas.
Okay, and I want to apologize for not being there in person today. I think at least some of you are aware that my youngest daughter is in the hospital and has been since Monday. So that is why I requested to just be on Zoom. So you know my name. I am from Michigan, and that is where I'm licensed. Most recently, I spent the last couple years working in Alaska. I came down here. This is where my father is from. I wanted to be back down in the lower 48 for some other family matters involving my mother's health. As I just said, my father's from Arkansas, so I wanted to have an opportunity to be here. I have relocated here already. So I'm hoping, I've never experienced not passing a test in my life, but I'm hoping that with some of the guidance that I've gotten from the last time that I will be able to pass it the next time. And for those of you that want to know, I went to Ferris State University in Michigan.
Well, that settles it. She can't take the exam at all. Ferris State just beat Harding University in Division II football, so I'm sorry.
Whoops, whoops.
That's purely jest. I'm just.
I know, darn those guys, right?
Beat them badly. I think 42-7.
That's rough.
Oh my, okay.
So you've been practicing in Alaska. Was that the place you practiced the longest?
Oh no, I've practiced the longest in the state of Michigan.
Okay.
And primarily all of my experience has been inpatient as a critical care pharmacist and in the emergency room. I did about 5 years of home infusion, about 3 years of long-term care. And then the hospital system that I started at as critical care, I had left there, and then they brought me back to be a director of pharmacy at one of their community hospitals for 3 years. And then I've had some other management positions, but primarily my strengths are in clinical pharmacy and hospital pharmacy.
What do you anticipate doing here in Arkansas?
My plan is to go work for Baxter Regional Medical Center in Mountain Home. And I'm just near here. I'm in Flippin.
As you went through the exam now a couple of times, did you notice, are there particular areas in which you feel that you have a deficit? I can imagine coming from hospital practice that many of the laws or regulations really seem to be geared toward community practice. And so I could see where that might create a knowledge gap. But Have you been able to identify any particular areas of the law that you just weren't very familiar with?
Yes, I have. And then the second exam was written mostly, and that caught me off guard. And I wasn't as specific on some of my answers as I could have been. I mean, I believe for the most part the answer was correct in a general means, but I wasn't specific in some areas. For example, one was requirements to purchase pseudoephedrine, and I didn't specify that it needed to be a government ID and it needed to be from the state of Arkansas. Another was CE requirements, and I didn't put that it was ACPE, but I honestly, I didn't think to put that because I've only ever done ACP, and to my knowledge, you know, my colleagues that I've worked with before, we all sort of know, like, don't do any other, because you'll never have those approved to renew your license. I was stunned about it almost looked like a NAPLEX question. There was a math question on there, which was fine. I was just like, oh, okay. But it looks as if I need to drill down more into being more specific and catching things that are more unique to Arkansas. And that is what I focused on the second time I studied. And I watched the video probably about 5 times. And what I took from that and I put it into notes was it was more or less an overview of each of the regulations and, you know, each point in the law and saying drill down on here or no, really don't worry about that. So I made myself my own notes to kind of drill down into places where it was indicated that, you know, you should focus on. And so I did do that. I'm not sure. I think, you know, from my conversation I had the last time, it was enlightening for me to try to focus on where I needed to concentrate my energy.
I know there's a lot of details. Dr. Kirtley's law review that I think is what you're referencing, the video. That I find to be most helpful in the sense of here's what you don't need to focus on. When it comes to the rest of it though, having practiced yourself already, then, you know, what I would do if I were you is I would print out each and every one of the regulations. I don't think you need to focus so much on the Practice Act, the statutes, because they're pretty well fleshed out in the regulations. And that you go through and you read each of those regulations and highlight the things that are different or that are unique to something that, like, oh, I'm not used to it being that way. And so that way you study the things that are different and that you can exclude those areas that Dr. Kirtley outlines in his lecture to say, you know, for example, we're not going to ask you what the fee is for a certain type of license. You'll know that when you get your invoice or whenever you encounter it on the website. So other than that, I mean, it doesn't sound like you had any, or at least looking at the exam, I didn't see any particular problem with whether it was true, false, or multiple choice. Were there any of those that you yourself feel like that you were did not perform as well on?
Well, it's hard for me to say because, you know, I'm not able to really look at it and say, oh, why did I answer true on this one instead of false, which is the correct answer, and then have that be a note to self, like go back and look at that again.
Okay.
Or do you know what I'm saying?
I do. Let me give you some general tips. These
Yes.
are the same tips that I give my students. When you encounter a true false question, don't read too much into it. Just read it within the context of what the question asks. If you start questioning and say, well, if this, then it could be true, but if this, it could be false. And if this, it kind of goes both ways. If you find yourself doing that, maybe leave it, come back to it. And then just reread it again and say, okay, what is it that the question is asking? You know,
Okay.
don't put all kinds of other scenarios in place. Just try to answer the question directly as it's asked.
Okay.
You will need to know, of course, schedules for several of the drugs. I think there are several questions on there related to that. So knowing what schedule different drugs are in. Multiple choice. Are you prone to picking an answer and then come back and change it?
No, what I usually do if I read a multiple choice is I look at the answers that are options. And I look for the ones that are obviously not correct. And I either cross them off or I, put an X or I put a no or a false next to it. So I know that that can just be eliminated. And then I go and I read the question again, and then I look at the answers that are left, to determine which one is correct. I try to simplify it for myself.
Okay. Well, that's a good test taking skill, so I would agree with that. And it doesn't sound like that you're prone to go back and change your answers. The worst thing you can do sometimes is reason through, arrive at an answer, then come back and talk yourself out of it.
No, if I find that I'm stuck, I will skip it altogether and come back to it.
Good. That's good technique.
I learned good studying skills when I was at Michigan State as an undergrad. That's where I learned all that.
Well, at least you didn't go to Michigan, so okay.
No, oh God, no.
I keep teasing you.
No, you can tease me all you want.
Does anybody else have any comment?
So what are you going to do different if you get another shot at the exam?
Sorry. Well, I've already been studying and trying to focus on what Dr. Kirtley had said to me. And I'm just really drilling down and making sure that I'm trying to focus on where I felt like there were deficits where he indicated that I was showing that I had a deficit. Probably take all the time required or given to me, not required. Otherwise, that's it. I'm just trying to, take the input that I've been given and go back and restudy everything. And, I take lots of notes. I'm a learner by reading and writing. That's where my strength is in learning, versus listening or watching. Probably because I'm older and that's how I was taught in school. But if there are any other things that anybody has input for me, I would appreciate it.
The only thing I would just say is be sure that you study, don't just skim.
Oh, no, I don't skim. I don't skim.
Okay, we'll look at entertain a motion. If it has in favor for, keep taking the floor for.
I didn't hear that. Was that a question for me?
No, I was talking to,
Oh,
my board
okay.
member.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, no problem.
We all met to make a motion.
Yeah, I'd make a motion to approve or take it for a third time.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Dr. Boone and a second by Dr. Jolly, for Ms. Crystal Tate to retake the law exam. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The motion passes by unanimous vote.
So Dr. Tate, we'll let Ms. Sweet in our office know that you have been approved for a third round, and that will allow you to get in touch with her and schedule whenever you feel like you're prepared for that test.
Yeah, I appreciate it, everyone. I really appreciate you letting me do this by Zoom as well.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, you enjoy your day. Thank you.
Two.
I saw one of our people for 2 o'clock. I don't know about the rest. Oh.
Lindsay. Wait. Thank you, Brenda, for doing this for us. Rodney, on you $4.
She. I quick look at this, I thought, I love you. Really, look at that. She passes you along.
It does, it looks like love you.
I owe. I love you too.
Yeah, love you.
I owe.
Love you, Brenda.
Okay, Rodney, thanks for the tea.
Yeah, thank you.
So, I said, thanks for coming to help. One. Oh, I'm not like that. Lindsay and I are gonna have a conversation sometime.
Even though
No.
All right, afternoon, everybody. How about we do this way? If you want to introduce everybody at that table and, you know, who you are and who you're with, then I'll do the same thing over here. Counselor, you want to start?
Darren O'Quinn on behalf of Matt Hambuchan.
I'm Matt Hambican of Walgreens and I'm sorry, Matt Hambican of Walgreens.
I'm Bridget, I'm from, being located.
Carrie Staff, I'm with the Walgreens Centralized Services.
Erica G. from Rutland and Jennings for these two ladies right here.
All right. I'm John Kirtley. I'm the director of the board. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the procedure. I have to tell you who all you're speaking with up here. On this side of the table, we are all staff members here at the Board of Pharmacy. Myself, Dr. Brenda McCrady is our assistant director here in the board offices. Miss Ashley Vales is our legal counsel. Dr. Lindsay Tankersley is one of our inspector investigators who has details of this specific case and issue. On the other side, we have 4 of our pharmacy board members that are kind of decision makers here today. We have Dr. Clint Boone on the end, Dr. Brian Jolly, Dr. Rodney Richmond, who is the president of the board currently, and Dr. Lenore Newsom, who is the chair of our informal committee. This one is a little bit different because we do have an order notice of hearing out, if it will pull up again. Every time we hit a button on our tablets, it takes us all the way back to a main menu, and we have to wander back through it. So in this, the board members are just now seeing the order notice as well as the background information. They've got about 40 pages of info. So I won't be surprised a couple of times they say, give us a minute, we got to read some stuff because they're just seeing it as they get here today. But in this, we call it an informal conference because it's much like mediation for any of our colleagues that are attorneys. We're trying to have an open conversation back and forth across the table. We will generally turn it over to our staff to give an overview of what the board members are receiving in their packet, and the board members will generally want to have a discussion or to hear any statements that you have or anything along those lines. At some point, the board members are going to come up with what they think they want to do with this situation. And it could be to say, we would suggest the following actions. It could be to say, we don't know if we want to make a decision on this today. We think this should go before full board. We don't know exactly what they're going to say until they do it. Whatever they come up with, you have the opportunity to either agree or disagree with that decision. If you agree with it and you don't have to do it right here, right now, it would be something we would be happy to reduce to writing and send back to you or to your legal counsel in case there are any clarifications that are needed or any questions that are they're part of it to see if we reach agreement. If we don't reach agreement, something like this would generally go before the full board at a later date. And I say full board or formal meeting in the context that it is all 8 members of the pharmacy board. I don't sit at this table at that time. We usually have a hearing officer and a court reporter. We swear everybody in as witnesses, and it's just a much more formalized procedure, more like going to court. So I always try to ask a couple questions. Do you guys all know kind of why you're here today? Do you have any questions before we get started? If at any point during this, if you have a question for us, if you need a sidebar with your legal counsel, if y'all need a break, whatever it is, get our attention, let us know. We're going to do our best to work with you to either answer any questions you have or give you a chance to have a sidebar or anything else. With that, I will turn it over to staff to give us an overview.
I just have one issue I need the board members to be aware of. There is an order of notice of hearing on these, on this case. If you'll scroll down to, they're divided up by different respondents. And if you'll scroll down to charges on respondent Hambican, C3, failure to counsel, we are withdrawing that on further review of our records. There's not evidence to support that. So we are taking that allegation off the table based on the evidence. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Tankersley to give a review of her investigation and the findings she made therefrom.
Thank you, Ashley. So pursuant to a complaint that was received by the board, that a patient had received 135 hydrocodone acetaminophen instead of 35, an investigation was initiated. I want to kind of explain the logistics as I understand it of the different locations or stores and how they play a role here. So, the prescription was first received by the Benton location, which is store 6959. It was scanned in there, the data was entered, and then the prescription left that location and went to centralized services, to be product reviewed by Dr. Stuff. After the product review, it then spat back to the Benton location, to be filled, was filled. And then the final visual verification was done by Dr. Hambuchen. And then it was picked up there at that location. The patient realized that they had more than they normally had, and called, and they did everything that they needed to do afterward to, correct with the patient. Of issue here specifically from the statements that I've received in the investigation, at the point of entry, after it was scanned in, it appears that Ms. Shavers was logged into the computer where the prescription was actually scanned and entered, but someone else was working on her login. That employee is no longer with the company. Ms. Shavers does acknowledge she was logged in and shouldn't leave herself logged in on a workstation. Then whenever it went to centralized services, it was verified for accuracy by Dr. Steffen, sent to be filled. Then when it came back, it was filled as if it were a correct prescription. Dr. Hambuchen verified the quantity as it was per his screen, but did override 4 DURs concerning opioid use and therapy, which if the profile had been reviewed, the either hydrocodone or oxycodone with acetaminophen had been filled by the patient between January and June of this year, 8 total times, never more than a quantity of 35 or 40. So it may have waved a flag. That's where we're at.
Okay.
I was going to clarify in my mind one thing before, because whenever we talk about this, it was scanned and input by a technician that's no longer there or isn't in this, because I think we just more recently found that out, but it was input under Miss Shaver's computer because you remained logged in and someone else came behind you and just did work. Then it went to they have a centralized permit that just has pharmacists in there to do the input verification, DUR overrides, and is that where the billing is done as well? Submit for billing?
No, not.
No. Right. So after the input is verified, then it goes back to it went back to home store to Dr. Hambuchen, where you submitted the billing then for the fill?
I believe, so I believe when it is initially entered is when it is submitted for the billing.
Okay.
I think it's upon entry.
Okay, so that
it's
happened before the
adjudicated.
other verification. All right. I was trying to get that straight in my head because I know that our board members are generally going to ask down to that specific level of it. Okay. That's what I need to know.
Okay, who wants to start first?
If it's okay with you, we'd like to start with Ms. Shavers, who, as Dr. Burtley mentioned, is the pharmacy technician, not the one who put in the prescription, but go ahead and have her explain her role. Here today. Oh. Can you push that? There you go.
Okay, I had started like the week before this incident happened, and I wasn't aware of the procedures or the policies of how everything was going. So with that being said, that I learned my valuable lesson. I make sure that I log in from this situation happening.
Log out.
You will log out, yes.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
At this time, were you even doing data entry yet as a
No, I have
technician?
not learned how to do it. This was my barely a week when this happened.
At that time, were you aware that you needed to log out of the workstation?
Well, yeah, I was like learning different parts of the pharmacy, and so I believe I just walked away and didn't log out.
You understand now how
Yes,
important
I
it is?
do. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next one.
All right, like to go ahead and go to Dr. Steph.
Okay, yes, I was at Centralized Services. The prescription came in, comes in with the hard copy. It comes in with all the data entry for me to check. I don't remember the specific prescription, but in looking at it, it had the pound sign before the 35. And I looked at it too quickly and I thought it was a 135. And the 135 is what was entered. And I went ahead and I approved it. It was very careless. I'm now double, triple checking myself, saying the data back to myself to make sure everything matches. And I've also come to the mindset of to think of the patient, every patient is a family member. I've just got to be extra vigilant, and it was just a very careless mistake. And I deeply regret it.
The hard copy's on 14.
I was just about to say that. So, Dr. Stuff, how long have you been?
34 years.
And have you ever been in this position?
I've never been in this position before, no.
And, did you have any other role in the filling of this particular prescription?
No, I did not.
So the DUR and.
I didn't have access to that.
It was not you.
Correct.
One question. Is the hard copy? You said you had a copy of the hard copy?
Yeah, it comes up on the screen,
On
not
the
the
screen, so-
actual hard copy, I'm
Right,
sorry.
the
But
hard copy would have come up at the local
correct,
store.
yeah, it was just.
And you're
it
at
was just-
Central Services.
Correct. It
Okay,
was
so
just a,
remote order entry.
yes, I didn't word that correctly.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah,
She sees a scan.
right, right.
She said hard copy. I just
Yeah,
want to
I
make sure.
apologize.
No,
I
that's
was
all right.
very
Picture of
nervous.
the hard copy.
Picture of the hard copy, thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Dr. Hambukes, when did you graduate pharmacy school?
I graduated in December of 2011.
And you've worked for CVS and Walgreens both?
Yeah, I mean, I work for, I work for a company that got bought out by Walgreens, and worked for Walgreens for 3 years. More or less bounced around, wound up, and then worked for CVS for 7 years. And then February of 2023, I left CVS, came back to Walgreens, and I've been with the company ever since.
Okay, and so your position in the chain of events is the prescription already been scanned in by a technician, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then it had gone to central filling, and you heard Dr. Stuff say what she did and what happened there, and then it comes back to you you're at the final step, correct?
Correct.
Okay, take us through what you saw and how you missed the quantity.
So, I believe since this prescription was verified at the central location, the DUR at one point popped up, or the DUR notifications popped up on my screen. Given their the past given the past history of the patient, nothing really stuck out as far as duplicate therapy, because the patient was seeing an orthopedic specialist and a family practice physician.
Let me ask you something about that. The family practice physician had prescribed tramadol and Xanax.
Right, and a day or two previous to that, we had, one of our other pharmacists had contacted, the family practice physician to ask them about, this drug cocktail, or to ask them about the tramadol and the benzodiazepine, and they cleared it.
So the orthopedic, doctor had prescribed the hydrocodone in this case, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you're saying, it's saying duplicate therapy, different doctors, those types of questions and the good faith dispensing questions that come up with a controlled substance. And did you clear all those in your mind?
I mean, in my mind, given the history that I had seen, unfortunately, nothing had popped out.
So let me ask you this. So the quantity, by that time, the pills are in the bottle, and tell the board what you do at that stage and what you see.
So what happened in this case, was when I went to scan the leaflet, or scan the barcode on the leaflet, the good faith dispensing prompt popped up. And what it had concerned was, multiple prescribers for controlled substances. But seeing as they had been receiving, I saw it in the history, that they had been getting these in the past. So it didn't occur to me. I mean, nothing out of the ordinary popped out. I wish I had been and during this good faith dispensing, the hard copy or the scan of the hard copy pops up. But because it was not, concerning the quantity, it was not something that I necessarily looked for. That is something that I have changed in my practice now. Anytime a good faith dispensing prompt pops up, I recheck the whole prescription just as an extra caution.
Let me ask you this, is the quantity of 135 abnormal quantity from your other prescriptions?
No, a quantity of 135. I mean, in the range of quantities, it's not something that really popped out to me. I mean, a lot of times we see prescriptions or see doctors that write prescriptions for, anywhere between, 120 to 180 on a daily basis. And
so you're looking at you did the good faith questions, then it allows you to go to the verification where you're looking at a tablet.
right.
Matches what?
I'm looking, so it'll pops up on the screen. It'll have, a picture of the tablet. I open the bottle, look in there, make sure that either the description, if they don't have a picture, that the description matches the bottle or the description matches the tablet. And then I also go to, and I check to make sure that the name on the bottle and the name on the, and the name on the leaflet match, along with the name of the drug. And then once I'm satisfied with that, I bag it, or staple the leaflet to the bag and pass it along.
And then you go out and do the counsel?
Yes, yes. So
they've withdrawn that you didn't counsel, and so we don't really have to go through that. So the quantity didn't stand out, and this person was in fact not doctor shopping, and not their prescribers knew what was going on between each other.
yes,
And actually, the patient brought this 100 excess tablets back to the pharmacy's attention, correct?
that's my understanding.
Okay. So, you said you've learned from this. Have you voluntarily taken some continuing education hours?
Yes, I have taken 6 hours I voluntarily took 6 hours of continuing education regarding medication errors.
And you've supplied those certificates to?
Yes, and I have supplied the certificates to the board. And it's just one of those, yeah.
Let me ask, the leaflet, the drugs and the leaflet of the names and all that matched up at your stage, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the quantity didn't just jump out at you?
No, sir.
Then you went out and counseled the patient?
Correct.
And then later on, the patient discovers they've got 100 extra and they call back the pharmacy?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
I have a few questions for Dr. Hambikin.
Yes, go right ahead.
When you're describing going through the good faith dispensing
Mhm.
process, the 4 DURs that were overridden are pretty much duplicate therapy, as you talked about with the tramadol and cocktails with the benzos and things like that.
Mhm.
But when you're doing a good faith dispensing, and following that protocol, you're typically looking at DURs that are thrown up by your system, but also as a pharmacist, I would think you're looking at the patient profile too, correct?
Correct.
If you were to view a profile for that patient, and this is in June, so from January 1 to the current date when this was filled, and had seen no other quantities but this drug, but 35 or 40 in 8 consecutive fills, would that not raise a red flag?
I mean, it should have. However, I mean, I guess what didn't, I guess what caused me to not, not look into that was, I mean,
No, what caused you not to look into it?
I mean, unfortunately, like I said earlier, I mean, it was, it was during the course of the day. Yes, I wish I had, I should have looked at the quantities. With any sort of narcotics like this, I mean, I've seen it in the past where a doctor writes same quantity, same quantity, same quantity, and then jumps up. That's more or less what caused me to not, admittedly, that's something from, anytime that pops up now, or, since this has been brought to my attention, I've made, more of a, conscientious effort to make sure that something like that doesn't slip by me ever again.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else? What is the will of the board?
Well, the prescription clearly said 35 tablets, right? I can see where the sidebar of the pound sign could look like a 1, but it says in parentheses 35. I mean, whatever the case, the quantity is wrong,
Yes.
but the dose is not wrong. The dose, and looking at notice order of hearing, it says that the dosage was incorrect and the dosage was fine. It's just there was too many tablets. Getting the quantity wrong and this being an opiate, if this were lisinopril, I like to try and apply a test to say if I substitute the drug, would it still be a concern? If you gave somebody 135 lisinopril versus 135 opiates, you wouldn't have that one concern that this is an opiate. So that'll transition to another thought. So just making a distinction, there was in fact an error of the quantity. That's what it was. But whether the patient got 35 or 135, they're not taking the drug any differently because the directions say 1 Q6 as needed. So it's going to last longer. The DUR, because it was done at central processing and then to the pharmacy, to the filling part, you can see there's a gap. The filling part or the entering part looks like it ended at 12:36 in 10 seconds. And then jump ahead about an hour and then you do the DURs, which all seem to be cleared at the same time, which that raises a different kind of concern. It's not, we don't know that anything came of it, but if you are doing your due diligence, certainly the opioid litigation has taught us anything is that we need to be over vigilant. And I know Walgreens, they were going after same as any of the top chains. And so this is not a unique problem to Walgreens, but the DURs of duplicate therapy and cocktail, I mean, at a minimum, part of your process, there should be some documentation regarding how you actually handled that, because it's not just that you recognize it as a red flag, but that you process or handle it in some way. That's not in the order of hearing, or it's not an issue we're considering, but I am pointing it out. This need to be of concern. Yes. Because you need to recognize what those red flags are, and not just blow through them. So that's all I see.
Any other board members have any comments? Okay.
Well, I think there is I mean, if nobody else has any other comments, I mean, just begin to, I mean, it is an error in processing of a prescription. So, I mean, it's not inappropriate that we hear it. You could have made the same error in a different field. But, I mean, the dosage didn't change. The only thing that changes is the quantity. So I think continuing education on medication errors, as we typically do, would be appropriate. Again, I think that plan of correction, because this involves remote order entry, two different sets of eyes from two different pharmacists in two different facilities. Not so much the technician. I mean, you need to be sure and secure your computer terminal, but I could see how in a week on the job that may not be the first thing on your mind. But plan of correction on how to make sure that you're checking all elements of the prescription. And then, I mean, we have had to deal with it, so it's administrative cost for investigation and make it non-disciplinary would be my recommendation. I'll make that a motion.
Not anything for the technician.
No, I don't see anything at this time. I don't. What do you?
No, I agree. So 10 hours for each of the pharmacists.
Yes, and that could include the 6 hours that he's already completed. Dr. Stuff, have you completed NC?
I have not.
Okay, so this would be 10 hours over and above your 30 hours that will be required when you renew your license next year. So you'll end up with 40 hours at least.
Oh, so
But I would say make that on medication errors, a combination of medication errors, and also look at the opioid red flags that the DEA is focusing on these days.
Does he do 4 more hours? Yeah.
Yes, so your hours so far have been on med errors?
Yes, sir. I had, so I get all my, usually during the course of a regular, 2 years, I do all my medication or do all my continuing education on the free CE. And they had 6 hours worth, they had 6 hours worth of medication error, continuing education. Had they had more, I would have done everything that they had.
And it looks like all that's on med errors, so I would encourage you maybe do the balance on looking at DEA red flags for controlled substance.
Yes, sir.
Prescriptions. You could do a combination, some.
okay. And we don't have to turn them in until we turn our other CE in at the.
Yeah, Yeah, you would have until June the 30th of next year to get all this CE done. Now, we'd prefer that you not get it all at one time, because then it just becomes a cram session over with and move on to the next thing. We'd rather you dole it out a little bit, build that into your practice, because I think it then becomes more meaningful if you do it that way. But again, just to make sure you understand, this would be an additional 10 hours over what you're already expected to get.
Okay, any other? Okay, we have a motion by Dr. Richmond, second by Dr. Boone.
Well, there's two different, well, it's one error. $250.
$250, we got that added in.
For the pharmacy. Non-disciplinary.
We didn't charge the pharmacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't have a pharmacy issue with it, so.
Any other further discussion?
She's wanting us to split it between the two of them. Right. And it's non-disciplinary.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? We have a unanimous vote.
So we will reduce all that to writing and send it to legal counsel, who will share it with you to see if you guys have any questions, clarifications, or anything else for consideration.
All right, thank you all.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Might have to ask.
Hey, John. Ask you a question or another matter.
Two. Yeah, we got a little bit more. Getting close. Okay.
Yeah, man.
Those matters? Yes, ma'am.
Well, we can scoot down now. I'll scoot down here. That way we can go on. Right.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
These chairs will lock, but like different positions lean back. They're actually really nice.
Yeah.
So it's not just straight up for everything. Oh, yeah. We've had some of those in this office.
Yeah.
It'll wreck your whole day.
One in the old school conference room. And then
Oh, yeah.
the woman sat down and
Broke.
underneath her. Yeah, that's a good start to it.
She was very, very pregnant and we thought it was going to dump her in the floor, which was very stressful.
It didn't.
So you've got microphones over there. If you want to turn them on and introduce you guys, and then I'll follow up on this side.
All right, Erica G, here for Karen Chaplin and Walgreens 11161. And here is Karen Chaplin here, and then we've got Brad Lawson here to explain some Walgreens information.
Okay, so Dr. Chaplin, did you hear the overview earlier of how the process works and all that? So you know who all you're talking to and you've seen kind of how it works. So I always ask, do you know why you're here? Any questions about the process? Once again, same notes as before. If you need to turn and have a conversation with counsel or you need a timeout or anything, please let us know. Okay.
Again, order of notice of hearing to sort of guide the discussion today. Walgreens has also submitted for the board's review some supplemental logs to sort of clear up some of the issues we'll be talking about today. So I'll have that to pass down to you all at the appropriate time. I'm gonna defer and to Dr. Tankersley to give us a overview of her investigation and the basis for the findings that are in the order notice of hearing. Actually.
So pursuant to a complaint that we received in February, alleging that the pharmacy was not open during its posted hours, by a patient of the pharmacy who apparently wasn't able to access the pharmacy during a stated hour. We conducted an investigation. At that time, the records that were provided to us, to see hours about actually being open would be the daily log book. So the findings here are based on the hours and the signatures that were found within there. The new supplemental information, I've not reviewed it either, but to me, the record is the record, and that was the record at the time. So I'll present that to you.
Okay. Who wants to start and say what happened here? What's been going on?
All right, if it's okay with you, I think what would make the most sense for the board members would be for Dr. Chaplin to talk about her role at the pharmacy, and she has provided a statement regarding some of the days that the pharmacy was not open, that she can explain. And then Dr. Lawson can explain kind of a bigger picture of what's going on there.
Can I finish? I had about 2 more sentences.
Sorry.
Dr. Newsom, I'm sorry. So the findings were, there were 11 hours per or 11 weeks per the log books for the time that we audited, where the pharmacy was open less than their minimum per week.
Repeat that last sentence again.
There are 11 weeks out of how many?
We did 11/11 of 23 through 7/17 of 24. There were 11 weeks where we weren't open at least 40 hours per the signatures in the logbook.
I'm seeing 9.
I'm counting quickly.
Okay.
I'll take it to 9.
Okay.
I think it's a detail at this point.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, are you ready?
No.
Okay, so I am the pharmacy manager there. There is no staff pharmacist. The staff pharmacist that was there quit, I don't know, a year and a half ago. So it's just me. There were days during that time that I had the flu at one point, and then in February, my husband's grandmother, she passed away February the 14th. And then exactly a week later, his mother passed away. So those 2 weeks I was off due to that. And then there was one day there was inclement weather. And I think that's pretty much my part of it.
Before you move on, where is the store?
Newport.
Okay, and could you say how many prescriptions you typically fill in a day?
Around 200.
200? Okay. And generally speaking, if you have to be off for whatever reason, are there floaters that are able to cover?
Usually.
No, I'm not saying always, but obviously there were some days when that was not able to happen. But on other occasions, a floater is able to come in.
Yes, just like this week, my husband's father passed away. And so there were floaters that covered the last 3 days.
Thank you very much.
And the majority of those times that Dr. Chaplin states were reported to the board. We were notified that they would be closed for reasons by Walgreens.
All right, so Dr. Lawson, what do you have to fill in with?
Yes, ma'am. Just number one, thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you guys. I'm not here to combat that this didn't happen. It absolutely did, in a few instances. Newport, as you guys know, it's a rural market. The floaters that we have that covers, Newport come out of Searcy or Jonesboro. And there were situations where we were not able to fill those shifts in emergency situations. We have continued to do our due diligence to ensure we have adequate staffing that's just able to support in case of an emergency, in case of, Karen's got a family, Karen's got a life, and we need to be able to support her through that. But we still have a responsibility to be there for our patients. And it's not something that we take lightly. Since we have gone through these situations a few times, we've kind of discovered the way around it may be that we need to extend hours on another day to ensure that we meet the board's requirement of open to the public 40 hours a week. So that's something we're currently working through in case we have an emergency where we're not able to support if we had to have a drop, leave at the drop of a hat. So the regulation around 40 hours a week, extremely important, and we will ensure that we follow that. It's the best of our ability. And that includes getting creative when it comes to, ensuring that we have appropriate hours for the patients. We do have a couple instances where the logbook that was taken, it was an issue with pharmacists not signing the logbook. They actually were there. We were open to the public 40 hours a week, and it was an issue with the pharmacist not signing a logbook. We've since had a coaching opportunity and discussion with these pharmacists. And Karen and I have kind of discussed what that process looks like on her end as the pharmacy manager to ensure that when she does return, that the pharmacist that worked that specific time made sure that they logged their hours appropriately. And then working with store management and our technicians in order to ensure that the technicians or the floater pharmacists are reminded to make sure you sign a logbook each time. So once again, not here to combat. We've take full responsibility for those specific instances. And then also for the signing of the logbook where that was missed, but we actually were open to the public.
Okay, I've got a question. What is the nearest pharmacy to the store in Newport for patients to have access? You said it was a rural area, but what's the closest store?
I think it's probably about halfway between Batesville and Searcy. Those would be like the two closest locations. Is that fair to say, Karen?
About how many miles is that?
Well, Bradford, but I don't know if how open it is.
We don't have a Walgreens.
Are you speaking of Walgreens locations or pharmacies in general?
Walgreens location,
Walgreens.
so that patients will have access to their prescriptions.
Yes, ma'am. It would be Searcy or Batesville. Most likely would probably be Searcy, I would assume. And it's about half an hour from Newport to Searcy.
Another retail store in town would be able to call another open Walgreens, have them reverse that and be able to transfer it. Correct?
Absolutely. And that would be another instance where we could utilize our centralized services to support us. And if we couldn't handle that at another location.
Your phones roll over whenever a location's closed to that centralized.
We don't have the IT capability currently with that. It would have to be done basically through me with centralized services. So it's more of a triage location issue when we can't service them out of another location.
There are other pharmacies, one's in Bradford.
There are pharmacies in town.
Pharmacies in Newport.
Oh, there is, okay.
I mean, there's
Okay.
one almost across the street from it and then a few blocks away. So it's not a one pharmacy town, but it is, it's because it is so far from everything else, there are that many pharmacies there.
Okay.
Looks like it's about 30 miles to either Batesville or Searcy.
So was there a note on the pharmacy even saying, get in touch with your closest Walgreens pharmacy? Or did you just say we were closed?
So I can't speak to specifics. I don't remember the specifics for each date here, but historically we've come in front of the board for a similar situation before. So that's been historical, the coaching that we provide for our front cashiers and store leadership in order to direct the patients to the closest pharmacy so that they can service them at the front end of the pharmacy, the store, not the pharmacy. Pharmacy's closed.
Like of the 9 weeks, there were 4 that I would consider consequential in that they were close to a day or more of not being open hour-wise. The rest of them were 2, 3, 4 hours.
Right, so in an emergency situation, we were able to shift people from one store to another when Karen was sick or had an emergency situation. And they weren't able to cover the entire shift, which put us behind for that entire week. So that's where we may need to get creative to ensure that we're meeting the board's requirements in an emergency situation like that, when we're not able to get staff there from, once again, Jonesboro or Searcy to support in an emergency situation.
So the daily log was the primary source for the hours open?
According to my investigation, that would be my source. Apparently what you're holding was compiled, say, per se, at the kitchen table after the fact. Of maybe missed things that were missed or not signed in that signature log. That's what I think.
Daily log, does it show the time filled?
Yes, sir.
It's in your packet there. It's in the packet there. There's pictures of them in your.
Investigation is in your packet.
Is it often that y'all have closures? This many closures?
No, ma'am, it hasn't been for quite some time. We've done tremendously better from a staffing perspective. I would say this is definitely a unique situation with our Newport location. And with Karen, stating that she is the only pharmacist, unfortunately, in Newport, we did have to bring her hours down to 42.5 hours per week so that we give those 2.5 hours are specifically for her lunchtime. And then the other 40 hours are there for the public, but we still have to be able to hold up our end of the bargain of being open those 40 hours, which unfortunately we weren't able to in a few of these instances.
This on staff.
Yes, ma'am. This is our lowest volume location in the state.
Okay, I appreciate what you're doing. I know that's not easy, being the only one, so tough situation to be in. What, for me here and saying like, we're gonna change the hours just to meet the minimum 40 requirement by getting creative, like, I don't, staying open till 10 one night just to hit your 40-hour minimum to me is not kind of really the spirit of the law, like trying to get to as close to the scheduled hours as possible. So, I mean, I don't know that necessarily you saying, hey, we're gonna stay 5 hours late one night just to hit that 40 is really what, for me personally, what we'd be trying to achieve. I don't, hopefully we can get a long-term fix where somebody's actually in there and you're not having to get creative on the hours. Cause I don't really think, just keeping one open later, just hit that minimum 40s.
Definitely not best case scenario. Absolutely. And that's not what we would want to have, all things considered. So I do have 2 December graduates from Harding that we have hired out of Searcy. They want to continue to live in Searcy. It's kind of difficult to get people to move to Newport. But that's, once we identified half an hour away, so definitely some different coverage. So we're continuing to try to recruit pharmacists to the Newport area. But I agree with you, Dr. Bebb.
Do y'all have, I guess I'm asking the Walgreens approach to this. Some pharmacies that are mainly open Monday through Friday will maybe open for 3 or 4 hours on Saturday. You guys have a policy against that, like we're not going to be open all day, we're not going to be open.
We're really hard to recruit people for that.
I don't know. I mean, you can incentivize the shift. I mean,
Some of our more rural markets do have like open till noon on Saturday. I think that's what you're kind of getting at. I would say it's not common practice, but we do have a few. It's all based upon the staffing in that situation too. If we're struggling from a staffing perspective, unfortunately, weekends are one of the first things that has to go to make sure that we have adequate staffing during the week, which is what happened in this situation.
Okay, Dr. Chaplin, how are you holding up? Holding down a pharmacy by yourself and not having anyone to give you any relief, not even any overlap?
I mean,
200 a day, that's a lot.
Some days are stressful, but, and I mean, it is nice to have somebody that you can call, you know, as a staff pharmacist and say, hey, we switch shifts or can you cover this day for me? And so not having that, it does add stress, but doing okay.
Because you're going through a lot of personal issues also, on top of what you're doing every day in the store. So is no one to give a relief?
So we do. Is that fair to say, Karen? I mean, it's not, you don't have a staff pharmacist in Newport that, you know, hey, I'm sick, can you come in? It's more of calling the scheduler, trying to move around schedules, move somebody from Jonesboro to come down or Searcy. But you do have days off and we cover those. Like this past week, she had another family situation and we were able to cover that with our floaters. But, you know, there's a few situations where unfortunately we were not able to meet that requirement.
Yeah, but this is where I get into worrying about her mental health and her well-being. And this is, you know, a little over and above for her to be not have any relief.
So it's a 40-hour work week, half-hour lunch. Right?
Yes, sir.
Which makes it 42.5.
Yes, sir. Correct.
Okay. And 200 a day, so you're open 10 hours a day.
9.
It's not
9 to 6.
It's 9 hours with a 30 minutes break. So it's kind of like 45 hours of time minus 30 minutes every day for lunch.
How much support staff do you have?
There are 2 techs that work. I think we have around 60 tech hours a week, something like that. You're able to see.
I'm gonna have to log in.
So they each work around 30.
Mm-hmm.
Is that enough? Is that adequate?
Most days, yes, because the store manager and the shift leads out front have, most of them have tech license.
And they come back and assist you? Okay.
You have technology,
I'm sorry.
robots.
There's no automation specifically at this location. Are you guys activated on Flex at all from centralized services? Do you get any?
So you do have the ability, like centralized service can help with some of the processing, checking duties. And then you've got at least one tech there all the time, then about half the time for another to help. Are your techs also acting as your clerks? Or do you have a clerk? So they're acting as clerks and then the other support staff can come back.
There's 7 techs on the roster currently.
And just complete it. So it's about a 10-hour, 9.5, whatever,
Yeah.
but it's about a 10-hour day. So 20 scripts an hour on average.
Yeah, I was about to look up the specific data. I think it's probably,
Well, I'm just going, I mean, she said 200 a day. So if it's 10 hours a day, it's about 20 scripts an hour. You got some central fill help and you got 2 techs.
I think what makes it more complicated is you get down to where you're only open the minimum hours. You have one issue come up in the week and then you're below the minimum.
Right. And it's not inconsequential that, I mean, if patients, if they expect that you're going to be open at 6 o'clock and they show up 4 o'clock and you're already closed, patients can't get their medicine. Not everybody gets it ahead of time. I mean, it's not inconsequential, but it doesn't sound like a huge problem that can't be overcome.
I think staffing, unfortunately plays a huge role in that. And that's one of my main priorities. And what I do is trying to ensure, like Dr. Newsom said, I care about my pharmacists and not just their ability to work, but, you know, their family and, you know, their
I'm not
health.
intending to be accusatory. I'm just trying to be factual.
Sure.
I mean, that's what it boils down to.
Yes, sir.
In addition to the 20 or so per hour, are you doing other clinical services as well? How does that run with immunizations and such?
Yes. They're, neither of the techs are certified to give immunizations, but there is a, shift lead, which I guess would be acting as a tech, when she comes back. She can do that when she's there. But if she's not there, then that's on me. And then we do the MTM and that service, and then, but yes, there are other things that I have to do.
What can you say about getting the other techs, certified to do the immunizations to relieve you some? Else?
I have, one of them was certified, but just does not want to do it anymore. And the other one, I have talked to her and, she's on the fence about it, but I'm still trying to talk her into it. Just, hopefully she'll want to do that.
Well, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. If the information on the website's correct, the other 4 stores in town are all maintaining their 40 hours. And 4 of the 5 are open on Saturdays and 1 is open on Sundays. I don't think the question about the hours compared to your market is out of, if you were the only pharmacy in town, that would be one thing. But that's why I was asking, is you have 4 other pharmacies in town that are maintaining a 40-hour minimum and including some weekend hours. So I think that's a valid point. I mean, as far as what are our expectations of this location? And are we willing to have the same locations for the other 4 stores in town if they can't be?
Well, that's the consistent situation that I find myself in as the board director, is that we will have situations where someone says, I'm really having trouble staffing this. And even though there's a pharmacy across the road, I'd like to be open less than X number of hours. And I say, well, you can be open 40 hours. It's very, very difficult for us to approve less than 40 hours of work if there is any other competition in the area. I mean, when we're talking about small towns that literally have 1 pharmacy and it's that or nothing, the board has given exceptions and exemptions to that. We've only had 1 other exemption in an area where, basically a community agreed to it to try to keep 3 stores open, and it winds up, it has 2 now. And I would say, we've included, Dr. Chaplin in this because she is the PIC, but we don't generally have findings that a pharmacist in charge failed to have a pharmacy open when they can't be at work. If I'm the PIC, I have to work my hours and I have to work at least half the hours it's open up to 32. But if I have a family emergency, I don't have the authority to make someone else come in. It's not, if I own the pharmacy, that's a different issue because I'm both the permit holder and the PIC. But otherwise, I'm not.
Absolutely. And my comments were not directed at you. I want you to know that. I'm just trying to look at it in terms of what's our decision today? Is it, how are we fair, taking into account the local environment?
Dr. Boone, did you have any comment?
Patients understand that if they somehow put them on the floor. The patients clearly in the complaint, they didn't understand that they could have had another pharmacy in town. Ask folks to do that.
I think those weeks that there was a flu, and I'm sorry about your loss when you had a death in your family. I think, you guys called, or I don't have concern about that. Just if if you were routinely averaging 38, 39, but the standard's 40, need that. And I agree with Clint about the communication piece. You know, how do the patients know that if the store's open, they have another route they can go?
But for the staffing shortage of pharmacists, finding a hard way to justify, I mean, the law says pharmacy be open 40 hours a week. Therefore, it should be. And if she has events that come up that certainly are, I mean, everybody has them, that they should be covered just without fail. But I don't know how we can justify, I mean, as Dr. Kirtley said, in a market that there are other pharmacies and they seem to be maintaining their, it's hard to justify saying, okay, you can be open less. So it just seems to be one of those cut and dry areas that if you're gonna be there and be a pharmacy, you gotta be open 40 hours a week.
I did do a look on, we've had a couple issues like this where I also went back and looked at if there were holidays in that week that would be state or federal holidays. It would make a difference on one week, whether it was above or below 40 hours. There are a couple other weeks that look, fairly low, that if they're, depending on the store, some stores will take off like President's Day, others don't. But I figure if it's a state and federal holiday, we usually don't necessarily count that against folks. So there are about 5 or 6 of those in the time period. The pharmacy, I don't know if this was noted or not, but according to my notes that I made just when I did an overview of this, 11/20, they had reduced hours. Like it was a higher number of hours, and so they had reduced it to help with some of the staffing issues from 47.5 to 42.5. So I think it was just deleting like that Saturday or something previously. So they had done some stuff earlier to try to address it. We kind of still have this squeeze point.
And would it be fair to say that if there was some catastrophic and they called you, we wouldn't count that against them either?
So when we have pharmacies that have a catastrophic event, we understand that happens periodically, but in general, we will have a pharmacy close for a day or half a day every once in a great while. Like I know pharmacies where, one of the pharmacy owners or a spouse passes away and the pharmacy closes to go to a funeral. But that generally might happen once, even in our, independently owned pharmacies. And a lot of times I hear stuff like that and they find cross coverage somehow, or they don't dip below 40 hours a week. Since this is on the cusp of how many hours they're open, anytime they miss a half a day, then it's below at that point.
So what's y'all's suggestion for a fix? Can you recap that for me? I know I may be asking you to repeat something you said earlier, but how do you think you can maintain your 40 average?
Magic wand, I would love to hire a pharmacist in Newport, Arkansas.
Yeah.
I'll continue that pace and continue recruiting for that. Until that happens, we will do our best to find coverage from our surrounding areas, specifically Searcy, since it is the closest and the biggest hub for that location. If there is a situation, to Clint's point, I know it's not to the heart of the law. If the regulation states 40 hours, then we want to make sure that we meet the regulation and that we're open to the public 40 hours every single week. But we are going to be more strategic in ensuring that we move people to cover an emergency type situation in specifically Newport and these more rural markets when that does arise. And also to Clint's point about communication. So we do put up signs, but I can be more intentional with directing the store team on exactly what to put on the signs and directing them to the specific store that's ready to support them I've done that in the past. I can reiterate that again and make sure that we have a template set out, if that were to happen again. But we want to prevent that from happening at all with getting adequate coverage and for an emergency situation.
Well, I know it's challenging. I don't want you, to sound like I'm.
It is what it is.
I know it's a
mean,
challenge.
Yeah. But to my point earlier, Karen's a great pharmacist, a big heart for her community, and very thankful to have her in that role. And we want to be able to support her to have a life outside of the pharmacy too, though.
I think you're hearing the board say that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would guess the board is probably going to take it on our chaplain's side as information and dismiss charges is what I would probably guess. And then determine if you want to do anything with the store for the failure to be open the necessary hours.
Despite all of this, Dr. Chaplin's pharmacy is one of the top 5 I've inspected. Everything was great.
To the point where like no red flags for potential filling errors or inaccuracies like on spot check. I mean, when Dr. Tanker's like, look, everything's great except for this one thing. Like I'm saying that sitting on this side of the table. She's a great pharmacist and is an example for a lot of others of how to not have errors and not have inaccuracies, even when you are, and this isn't saying short staff, but she's in a store where the amount of business it's her and a tech or a tech and a half and some help as they come back. And she's killing that side of it. She's doing great.
But Dr. Chaplin, if you ever need help, say something. No one knows except you if you need help or not. And don't hesitate on calling. So what are you gentlemen thinking?
This is through July. How have you been the second half of the year?
No issues that I'm aware of whatsoever.
Did 40 hours a week on since this?
To my knowledge.
Closed.
And during did I read that the average was still for the time frame? Was the average still above 40, even with the ones that dipped below? Did I miss?
I'm not sure I calculated the average. But I will say, if we want to excuse the fact that the record is the record, and we look at what the log should have said, it may have eliminated more than half of these weeks.
I calculated it. It was right over 40 for the entire time period without counting if there was a potential holiday closure. So if there was a holiday closure, it would have actually assisted just a little bit, but there was only 1 week I saw where like July the 4th, being open part of a day or being closed that day, whatever it was very close and it would have put them over 40 on that 1 week. But the overall expanse of time, we've had some internal conversations of, hey, the rule says 40 is 40. And the trouble is, well, if 40 is 40, how many not 40s do we see before we are here? And, 8 to 10 is, if we're talking about 1 a month for several months, it's like, well, the board's going to have to talk about this at some point.
If you want to delve into the weeks, there is a calendar that is month by month that shows.
I'm inclined to say, I'm just going to throw something out there. I'm inclined to say we drop the charges, or I don't know what the right verbiage, Ms. Fails. We dismiss the charges, take no action on the order, or we're not in a session, so are we take no action on the order and notice of hearing?
Accept it for information at this time.
I'd like an update.
And yeah,
that's where I was getting to.
Yeah.
But as far as the store hours, but specific to the PIC, dismiss those. But as far as the store, I'll turn it over to you. What were
I'll just
your
an
thoughts?
update. And
Update in 6
folks
months.
graduating. Yeah, I mean, so not the February meeting, but maybe following up.
Hey, June?
Yeah, June.
So I put for Karen, for Dr. Chaplin, except for information dismiss charges, but we want an update in 6 months for hours open from the store.
Do you want that written or do you want them to appear?
Written, I think.
Okay.
Appropriate.
Do we want to, I guess, how will we verify that using the daily log? How do you want me to collect that information in 6 months?
I think we're asking them to send it to us.
Okay.
What if we just ask for a summary table, week by week, hours, when I open, close, and what total hours were, and then provide a copy of the daily log to support it.
That works.
Those two ultimately should be the same thing, correct?
But you're providing the summary to make it easy for us, because if you get the daily log, you're gonna have to figure it out.
That's my job.
Dr. Jolly, was that a motion?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, have a, motion on the floor by Dr. Jolly, a second by Dr. Boone. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Unanimous vote. So, can y'all do that for us?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Okay.
We
Thanks
heard-
very much.
We heard you should quit taking pictures for yearbooks with any of our staff, though. Which you've done pretty well.
You were most likely to succeed? That's awesome.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Happy holiday.
You too. Are you done for the day? You have 15 more people. Okay. Oh, I just saw somebody sitting out there. All right. We kind of matched today, Brenda, a little bit.
Okay, did these three people show up?
At least one of them.
Okay, okay.
Who got counselor? File. Number 11.
How are you today?
Well,
All right, Ms. Fowle, I'm John Kirtley. I'm the director of the board. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who you're talking to at this table and kind of how this procedure works today. On this side of the table, we are all staff members here in the Board of Pharmacy offices. Myself, Dr. Brenda McCready, who's our assistant director, Ms. Ashley Vales, who's our attorney here in the board offices. On the other side of the table, we have 4 of our pharmacy board members. We have Dr. Clint Boone, Dr. Brian Jolly, Dr. Rodney Richmond, who's the president of the board, and Dr. Lenore Newsom, who is the chairperson for this informal committee. We're here today. You had submitted an application to be a pharmacy technician in the state of Arkansas, and you did let us know that something might come back, which is what we're going to have talked to you about. In this process, we call it informal because we're having just kind of a conversation back and forth across the table. At some point during the discussion, the board members are going to come up with some suggestion for what they would like to do with your application. Could be to approve it, could be to deny it, could be to table it and not consider it any further today. We don't know what they're going to say until they do. But whenever they do come up with some proposed decision, you can either agree or disagree with it. If you agree with it, we go forth with whatever they've asked us to do as staff. And if you disagree, you kind of have one of 2 choices, either to say, forget this and walk away from pharmacy, or to request a hearing before the full board at a later date.
Full board is all 8 board members. Instead of me sitting up here, there'd be a hearing officer and a court reporter. We swear everyone in, and it's just a much more formal procedure, similar to if you have to go to court for something. So always ask, do you know why you're here today?
Yes.
Do you have any questions about how this works?
No.
At any point realizing you haven't sat in that chair before, if you do have a question or if something sounds weird or is confusing, by all means, stop us, get our attention, ask any questions you've got, and we'll do our best to help answer it. Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Bales.
We have brought Ms. File in for the informal committee's review today. She did disclose that there would be some arrest on her record. The first one is from November 7th, 2023. She was arrested in Bond County, Illinois for battery. According to the court documents in your packet today, she struck the victim in the head with her fist. On November 27th, 23, she was sentenced to 18 months probation, mental health evaluation, no illegal drug use, and no contact with the victim. On December 31st, 2023, she was arrested for DWI. According to her statement, she drove after drinking, hit a curb, blew a tire, and landed in the ditch. She fell asleep in the car and was awakened by law enforcement. She refused field sobriety test, but did take a breathalyzer where she flew over the legal limit. On May 9th, 2024, she went to court and was sentenced to 18 months probation, fine and court costs, to attend a victim impact panel, prohibited from consuming alcohol or cannabis, and a curfew was imposed, as well as 100 hours of community service work to complete. The more recent one is from January 23rd, 2024. There was a petition to revoke her probation on that first battery charge that was filed because she got arrested for DWI. On May 9th, the court found that she did violate her probation and re-sentenced her to 12 months on an order of conditional discharge, which under Illinois law is a conviction without probationary supervision, but your sentence, she was sentenced under the same provisions of that she had under probation. And so those are the reasons that we brought Ms. File in for consideration.
Okay, do you want to tell us about this in your own words?
I feel like it's almost making an excuse, but I went through a really bad time in my life after I separated 3 months before my wedding. And I spiraled a little bit, a lot. And it was very poor decision making on my part. It was not something that I had ever done before or would ever do again. It's essentially ruined my life. And I was using alcohol as a coping mechanism during both of those incidents. I have since not only completed a mental health eval, I went to alcohol and drug abuse counseling and completed that and got certified through that, and have been just continuing to work to stay away from alcohol. Drugs were really not my issue. It was the alcohol that was filling the void. And realizing that it was actually my coping mechanism was probably the first step in me doing something about it. So I've just been trying to keep that mindset since I moved down here. I got away from the triggers that I had whenever I was back at home. It was my hometown. I grew up there my whole life. So everybody knew about the entire situation of my separation, my arrest, and just had kind of wanted to start over.
So, why do you want to be a pharmacy technician?
I've been a pharmacy technician in Illinois for the last 10 years.
Okay.
I don't want to say it's the only thing I know how to do, but it's one of the good things that I know how to do, and I know how to do it pretty well.
All right. Have you sought out any employment, or are you working currently in the
I
pharmacy?
transferred to the CVS here. I have been working as a cashier. Right before my move, I got my position changed to a shift lead to where I could continue to stay on with the same company and then potentially get my license down here and move back into the pharmacy. So all I've done is really cashier since I've been down here, but it kept me in a familiar setting.
Okay.
So is the court aware you've moved?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I changed my address. I moved down here July 1st and the state's attorney at the sentencing in May knew that I had planned on moving but didn't have a date. And then in June, 2 weeks before I moved, I updated everything with probation and I mean, they've sent me letters since then, just requesting updates on everything. So they're.
Have any pending court dates there?
But you are still under probation.
Yes,
Until-
conditional release. As soon as my fines are completely paid off and my community service is done, I can request release from the probation department. And as long as I haven't violated it, which I haven't, they will release me from the probation.
And you were a technician back in Illinois,
Yes,
you said? Where at?
I worked in Greenville at a CVS.
Oh, CVS, okay.
Mhm.
How many years?
I worked for CVS for 12, but I've been a tech for 10.
Okay.
And I am currently still licensed.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to give me specifics, but are you getting pretty close to paying off your fine and completing your community service?
I'm almost done paying off my fines. They combined all of the fines because my lawyer had them combine the two cases. So when I look at it, I see it separately, but I'm basically done paying off the fines from my battery and I'm working on the fines from my DUI. And they were actually almost pretty equivalent fines. So,
What about your community service hours?
I've done 80 of my 100 community service hours and I have 20 hours left.
Okay.
So you have to do all that and it has to be 12 months? Or is it can be cut off before 12 months?
It's Illinois, so I'm not an
That's
expert.
my trouble with it.
But I had to look up even what a conditional discharge is because we don't have that here. But my understanding is she doesn't have a probation officer. She still has all the duties that she had on that original sentence. So I'm not disputing the fact that if she finishes it, she probably could get it done
Get
before
released.
12 months and get discharged from the whole thing.
So when's the last time you drank?
I drank probably 4th of July weekend. I still had my breathalyzer in my car. And I went through about not driving my car and had a whole ordeal with the company. And because I didn't want to drive my car and because I didn't, it killed the battery in my car, which resulted in them thinking that I was locked out of my device. It was a really irritating time and I had to drive all the way back to Illinois to get them to fix it. And that was whenever I said it's not worth drinking and just not driving. So I haven't been drinking.
And this may be my confusion on the different parts that we have as a summary, but you got 18 months probation from the DWI. It says on May 9th.
You got first, she was on probation for battery.
Yep,
Violated that by getting a DWI.
yep.
And then got 18 months probation for the DWI.
Which says started May 9th of 24 on this.
Yeah, and then went to court on the petition to revoke her probation and they switched it to
They,
order of conditional discharge.
the same day.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah, May 9th, yes.
So I guess what was confusing me is she had one that looks like it was 18 months on May 9th and one that was 12 months on May 9th.
Yeah, and that's what is reflected in the paperwork.
Okay.
But you're right.
But it looks like
Doesn't
you're
make a lot
not
of sense.
supposed to have any alcohol while you're on probation.
I am not.
It also says cannabis. Do you use marijuana?
I do not. I believe it was included because after the paperwork was signed, the judge called the state's attorney and my lawyer up, and instead of it being a charge of a DUI with a breath alcohol of 0.08, it now just says DUI, which can also include being under the influence of drugs because recreational marijuana is legal in Illinois. I didn't get a say in that.
What they sent you.
Yeah.
You know, when you go to the airport in Illinois, you get through TSA and then they have marijuana cannabis, like, you know, throw it in the bin before you get on the airplane. So you can go through TSA with it, but you can't get on the airplane with it because you're going to land somewhere where it's illegal. The amnesty box is on the wrong side of TSA is the way it looks to me. If you carry drugs through TSA and then you have an amnesty box. Very weird.
So the short answer is you've never,
No, and I was drug tested right before I moved down here for my switch of position at CVS.
So the 12-month thing, does the clock start May, or if she completes, is your best understanding that that 12 months would not be finished until May of 2025?
That's my understanding looking at it. So we May of 2025, if she completed everything and is in good standing, I don't see any bar from her asking to be released early, but that would be up to the judge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my intention. I don't plan on not asking once I'm done with everything.
And they may not have said this, but typically the board doesn't approve licensure until you've kind of completed your probation and met all those requirements. So that's why everybody's asking if you hadn't been said.
Realizing this is on camera, did they identify any issues with an addictive disease with the alcohol, or just that it was a coping mechanism?
That it was a coping mechanism, and that because of what I blew is what was recommended via my victim impact, like how much of that needed to be done because of the alcohol content, not because of potential for abuse.
I don't know that we want to set the precedent of discussions before probation's concluded, but can we table it and let it, I mean, if it turns out that she completes her requirements.
What if, instead of doing that, could we just, if everybody, if it's the will of the board, we could say, once she completes her probation, staff can grant a license at that point.
Because if you don't know when the time period is, what I was confused on, is it still a year from now, 6 months from now, or can it be done early? And not knowing that, the question is, if you were willing to approve her once that was done, you can instruct staff to do so. But then you have to decide, do you want to see her again at that point, or is it okay for her to just turn that in, verify with us, and us approve it? It's kind of,
I would be okay with the latter, but
yeah, we've had a couple instances where we've done.
I had another one recently that we just did that on that gave me the paperwork and it looked good, so we approved it.
and I don't really think we have, flesh out when the 12 months starts. Is it early? Because really the onus would be on her to give us documentation that the probation period was over, right?
We usually say approvable by staff once released from probation is the way I would put a motion like that.
And I would just add, I'd like to see proof from the court.
Yeah.
That you've been released from probation.
So move.
I'm seconded.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Any nays? Motion passes.
So what they're saying is, whenever you get released from that, like, don't have any more issues, don't be drinking any more alcohol, make them mad, because knowing my luck, I'd decide, oh, it'd be okay tonight, and then I'd get caught doing something stupid and be in a whole other world of trouble. As soon as you have proof from the court that you are released, that everything's been completed and you're released from that, not saying you just have to wait out the calendar, send it to us and staff would be able to process your application. Okay.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And one of the reasons we do that is, well, not the only reason, but we don't want to deny and then just say, come back and reapply, because then you've got a negative action on you've got a denial on file from a board. So this prevents that from happening too.
Yep. Thank you. Might be able to, but she's not until she pays her fine and clears her. Makes you do her stuff.
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Afternoon, Ms. Lucas. I'm John Kirtley. I'm the Director of the Pharmacy Board. I'm gonna tell you real quick, kind of who you're talking to and a couple things about this procedure. On this side of the table, we're all staff members that work here at the Board of Pharmacy. Myself, Dr. Brenda McCready is our Assistant Director, and Ms. Ashley Bales is our attorney here in the offices. I have 4 pharmacy board members on the other side of the table. They're decision makers for you today. We've got Dr. Clint Boone, Dr. Brian Jolly, Dr. Rodney Richmond, who's our board president, Dr. Lenore Newsom, who's the chair of this informal conference. We are here today. You had submitted an application to be a pharmacy technician in Arkansas, and you did let us know that something might come back, which what the board members are going to want to talk to you about.
Okay.
In a moment, I'll turn it over to Ms. Bales and she'll give us an overview of that. And then the board members are going to have discussion with you. And at some point, they're going to say, here's what we would like to do with your application. They could say they want to approve it or deny it or reconsider it in some amount of time. We really don't know what they're going to say until they come up with that. Whatever they come up with, you can either agree or disagree with. Not something you have to sit right there, right then and tell us either. We generally will put it in writing, or if it's something that you just automatically say, yes, I agree to it, we go forth with whatever they say. If you do not agree with it, it's kind of your chance to either say, you know what, forget this, I'm not going to be involved in pharmacy. Or you could also say, I want a formal hearing before the full board at a later date on your application. That is a formal hearing with all 8 members of the board, hearing officer, court reporter. Everybody gets sworn in like witnesses in court, and it's just a more formal procedure. It's always asked, do you know why you're here today?
Why am I here?
I said, do you know why you're
Oh,
here?
well, no, yes, I do.
Okay. Do you have any questions about how this process works?
No, I don't.
Okay. If that changes, realizing you haven't sat in that chair before and we've been here all day doing this.
Okay.
If you've got any questions or anything, by all means, get our attention and ask them. We want to help answer any questions you have.
Okay.
That I'll turn over to Ms. Bales.
We brought Ms. Lucas in and for informal committee review. She did disclose that there would be an arrest, and she also disclosed that the case has been expunged. There was an arrest on June 6, 2015 for theft of property, a misdemeanor. According to her statement and court records, she shoplifted baby clothes from Kmart. She was sentenced to $460 in fines and restitution. Then on October 13, 2016, she was charged with failure to pay fines. She did catch that up, and the charge was dismissed once all of the amounts were paid. And as I said, those cases have been expunged.
Yeah, I mean, I was fresh out of high school and pregnant and really didn't know how I was gonna be able to like get my baby anything. So I just was young and really stupid. I went with friends and I thought I knew what I was doing. I really didn't know what I was doing, and I got caught immediately. Like I tried to take something that didn't belong to me and I was caught, and that's what happened.
Okay. So what brings you to pharmacy?
I want a career. I want to change my life. I've been working, but having this record and stuff, it kind of limit me on certain jobs. So now it's gotten to a point where I have to do something seriously, like to take care of me and my family. So I chose pharmacy because I'm like, it's something local, the hours are good, and it's something that could help provide for my family. So that's why I'm trying to get my life.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions for this candidate?
I'll make a motion to approve her application.
A motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank y'all, because I was like, it's so long ago. I'm just like, I don't. Okay, thank y'all so much.
Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
Have you talked to anybody about a job yet?
No, I had went back to teaching and childcare just until everything got straightened out. But I did do like application for drug emporium and stuff. I'm gonna follow up now that I know, like I'm able to use my license. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Maybe Kroger. It's close by my house.
Oh, yeah.
Let us know shortly. If she says that's it, y'all better sprint.
The last person? Yeah, we got everybody except the last person.
Full day today.
Mm-hmm.
I had one that was.
Yeah, that is it for today. So we will close out this meeting. Thank you, guys.
Merry